Hi, welcome everyone. We're excited to have you here. We wanted to kick off today's webinar on binding culture, talent, and tech by welcoming you to the series. First off, if you're wondering where my voice is coming from, surprisingly, it is not Ben over there, the amazing ventriloquist. It's just me working behind the scenes. I wanted to pop in to welcome you all to this great discussion we are about to have. You are listening to episode 5 of Verified First HR at the Table series. In each episode, we interview HR leaders like you, and we dig in to uncover HR concepts, tips, and strategies. From speakers like you, we have compiled so many great ideas, insights, and resources to best support our HR community. If you ever want to recap the event or study up on some additional input based on insight from these discussions, check out our blog page where we deep dive into all of our HR at the Table discussions. So far, we've talked with IBM about the reinvention of HR, MSI about CEO and HR alignment, TrueBlue about the intersection of HR tech and work, Prestige Care about maximizing the HR trifecta for return, brand tech and talent, and today we're adding another layer to the conversation, discussing the role of culture when added in the talent and tech mix. We have some great webinars planned for the rest of this year, so if you enjoy this one, make sure to mark your calendars for our next events and keep up to date on the topics we're talking about. If you have attended those previous HR at the Table episodes I mentioned, let us know. For everyone attending the live recording, test out that chat functionality by telling us which webinars you've attended and what stuck with you. If you haven't attended one of these webinars before, no worries. It's great to have you here. You can still test out your chat functionality by letting us know where you're calling from or what the weather is like for you today. All right. As everyone drops their answers in the chat, I will kick us off by saying hello and welcome to another podcast-style webinar episode of HR at the Table, where Ben Cornett at Verified First talks with HR and talent acquisition leaders from some of America's most notable companies about their roles at the executive table. But before we get going too fast, we have some things to keep in mind. Remember that chat functionality we all tested out? Use it. We would love to hear the questions you have from today's discussion, and we'll answer as many as we can throughout the webinar and at the end. FYI, this webinar is being recorded, so you can use it as a resource and watch it whenever you want. Bonus, for our attendees looking for SHRM credit today, we'll share later how you can earn that 1 PDC credit. So, without further ado, take it away, Ben.
Well, hello, welcome. I'm Ben Cornett. I'm your host for today's interview, and really excited and very kind words. Today, we're going to thank Smart Recruiters to being our sponsor for today's episode on binding culture, talent, and tech. And I get the opportunity to have our listeners tune in, and so thank you for listening to us sometimes month over month. I'm really excited for today's podcast-style chat with a special guest of ours today, and we're going to be talking about binding culture, talent, and tech. So I really want to think about our last HR on the Table. We talked a little bit about the trifecta for return, talent, tech, and brand. And to continue that exploration, we have Joy Wise-Davis, the Human Resource Director at University of Minnesota, here to discuss how the University of Minnesota, which, by the way, is a great research institution in the US, is here to discuss how they use their culture to really bind talent and technology together in their talent acquisition strategy. So without further ado, Joy, welcome today. I'm excited to visit with you. Maybe take a moment and tell our audience a little bit about you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Ben, for having me. Thank you to Verified First and all the great staff that is supporting this broadcast today. It's an honor to be here. Like you said, Joy Wise-Davis. I am the HR Director for the College of Science and Engineering at the University of Minnesota. We are the second largest academic department within the university. And I've been in HR for a little over, over 25, 26 years. First part of my career, I was in the private sector. Last 7 or so have been in higher ed. Varied roles, everything from the HR trainee all the way up to the HR director, and a little bit of everything in between. And so when I was in the private sector, did a lot in terms of varied industries, so wireless, retail, grocery, insurance, and all within HR. So I kind of like it. When I came to the university, I started in healthcare, specifically the medical school, and now, of course, science and engineering. So have had the opportunity to be in the HR space in many different ways, and have really enjoyed it and have been able to kind of sound off, if you will, in different types of HR spaces and at the table at different times. And being a part of the university really gives me an opportunity to get to work with a lot of great other HR directors, other great C-suite leaders, and get the opportunity to just have a time to show how valuable HR can be in all decisions that are made.
Well, it's a lot, Joy. So a lot of experience, a lot of background, pretty clear that, you know, I'm really excited to kind of dig into that experience a little bit. But maybe before we go there, I know one of the things that stood out to me, and, you know, I've been in school, it seems like my entire life, you know, actually in the defense stage of my dissertation right now. And it's kind of interesting, you know, University of Minnesota, you guys are known as one of the top R1 institutions. And I know we talked a little bit about that previously, maybe high level for our audience that really doesn't know that what that means and why that's important. Maybe give us a, I don't know, a 30,000 foot view of what it means for University of Minnesota to be a R1 institution.
Absolutely. So R1, Research One, it means that we're just a very research intensive university. We get a lot of grant money to do research. We have a lot of well-known researchers that come to the university. We have a lot of well-known researchers that we lend out, if you will, to work with industry, to work with other universities. We are on the cutting edge of new technologies, of new healthcare. And so really there are, I believe it's a little over 100 and maybe 20, 25, something like that. I don't know the exact number that get the R1 distinction. And so we're the only one in the state. And it's a great honor to have, because it really does mean that you are in the know, if you will, with regards to what's happening. I'm sure everyone perhaps may be aware of Dr. Michael Osterholm and all the work that he has done with Dr. Fauci and the vaccination pieces. And I'll tell you, being a Research One organization allows us to have the latest and greatest science and information on that. So it really just means that we are kind of out there and above everyone else when it comes to information.
Yeah, got everything together. I think that's super interesting, you know, and as we kind of morph into that, what that means, you know, that means to be able to attract that world-renowned researchers to your organization, you know, culture probably really comes into play. So, you know, maybe high level, what does binding culture, talent, and technology look like to you?
So for me, I kind of look at it in a circular manner. When I think about kind of the tech, that's kind of the first piece of it for me, not necessarily the biggest or the only, but just kind of that first piece, starting from the talent acquisition side. You know, what does our branding look like? What does our interface look like with an applicant? You know, is it easy? Is it fresh? Is it displaying who we are, mission-driven organization, someone, you know, an organization here for students, faculty, and staff? And that then will hopefully attract individuals that want to be a part of a mission-driven organization, that want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And then that informs the culture, because if you get individuals that are interested in that and want to be a part of that and want to work with that, then that informs your culture, and you can build a culture that wants to continue that type of work. We want to build an inclusive environment. So we talk about that on the website. We want to talk about our diversity initiatives. We want to talk about inclusiveness. We want to talk about the things that we're doing. And so it fits together I just look at that as a holistic piece, not that you can't have one without the other, but are you as good if you just pick out pieces of it? And so to me, it's that holistic, almost chicken and the egg type of thing. It works together.
Yeah. So, and having, that holistic view, I know we haven't really chatted about this. What kind of challenges have you faced trying to have that approach where it is, the holistic view of the culture, talent, tech?
I think one of the things that we faced is, right off the bat, individuals that may not have access to tech, right? Individuals that, there's people out there that believe in our mission, that believe in wanting to do the right thing, wanting to be a part of an organization like ours, but don't have access. So how do you reach those folks? How do you make sure that you're covering all those bases? And that's when you kind of have to get back to, what did we do before all this tech? How did you reach out? Word of mouth. You're out there and you're being accessible, approachable. You're utilizing the folks within your shop to go out and find folks. I remember when I was a recruiter, my business card was all over this city. And it was because that was the way you did it. It was based on relationships. And so I think that has been a challenge. I think just the diversity, the demographics changing has been a challenge. Is the branding that we have, are we able to communicate in the different languages that are out there with the different cultures that are out or that are around us now? Are we making sure when we say we want an inclusive environment, are we really being inclusive in our messaging? Are we really welcoming everyone? Because if you're only doing things in English now, then that's not very inclusive. And so I think we have some work to do in that space. And so I think those are some challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, and that's definitely, we see that in all the HR, publications. Diversity and inclusion is definitely a topic hot on, and it should be, right?
Right.
My wife is very diverse. I'm married to a Brazilian lady, and there's a lot of places that she doesn't feel like she's equal, and it's just kind of frustrating at times. It's really interesting. You talk about this a little bit of, sometimes we have to figure out for the people that don't have the tech, right? They don't have access. Now, COVID hit us, right? How did that impact the university access to bring in talent? I mean, did you find yourself with people who didn't have access to tech and therefore it's just not an option, right? I mean, how did you guys address that?
Wow, that was interesting. So if
Still
you,
is.
yes. So first of all, higher ed traditionally is you're at work. You're at work 8 to 5. We kind of call it butts and seats, if you will. Can I say that? Oh, goodness. Yeah, I said it. Oops. But anyhow, yeah. So that's been kind of the traditional model. We had, I don't know, 4 or 5 days to switch everything online. And who knew, but we had to do it and we did it. And so what we found is, to your point, some people didn't have the tech at home. And so we had to really shift gears very quickly, but you know what? We figured it out. We had to get creative and, come up with ways to get people hotspots, to get people laptops. And in certain cases, we had to, help people with internet connections and getting their wireless packages and things like that. And so where there's a will, there's a way. And so we figured it out and we did that. I will say we implemented a hiring pause or a hiring freeze, if you will. And so we did not have a lot of active hiring. We still had critical positions that needed to be filled, and we still encouraged folks to apply. So if you had the tech or you had the means to do that, you still could. But fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you looked at it, we didn't have the volume that we normally would have had. And so we realized we could do it, but we had to really take a step back, along around May or so, and go, oh my gosh, what has happened? We just were kind of doing, which maybe is not a bad thing sometimes, to kind of do first and think later, because the work had to get done.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So Joy, last year I had the opportunity, well, not only us at Verified First, we had the opportunity to host what we call our HR coffee hours. And because a lot of people were in that boat, it's like, oh no, what are we going to do? And so we put together this series of HR coffee hours, and we had several thousand companies come and attend. It was really just a forum to people to share the ideas of how they're dealing with the change, right? And it's really interesting. The thing that stood out to me is HR professionals like yourself and everyone else in our audience. Wow, you guys are like, you guys should all be Marines because you adapt and overcome. And I think you guys are heroes for being able to do that in a world that's so different. And one thing that stood out from COVID, we've talked about in previous episodes, HR at the table, is the fact that now HR they have a seat at the table, where some organizations before that wasn't the case, but now it's talking about safety of our people and the well-being of our staff and some of those other topics, which is very, very important as well. So hats off to you, and hats off to everyone listening. You guys are heroes in my books. I want to just shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of aligning your company vision to culture, talent, and tech. But before we go there, just a reminder to our audience, feel free to post questions. We'll try to address as many as we go along. And really, this is all for you all. But Joyce, so what are the benefits of really aligning the company vision to culture, talent, and tech that we've been talking about? Think about the benefits there.
I think the benefits to having that alignment is you get to take the organization to that next level, whatever that means for your organization. I'm certainly not naive to think that everybody walking through the door is in lockstep with where the university wants to go. But what I feel is, though, if our branding, our messaging, what we're putting out is who we are, then people, applicants, can make an informed decision about, is this the place I want to be? Right. And so if we're talking about, we want to continue to be highly ranked as an R1 institution, we want to continually be highly ranked as, having a great medical facility and a great medical school. We want to continue to have great industry partners, whether that is through our Carlson School of Business or through the College of Science and Engineering. We want to, have these relationships. We need to let people know that, right? We need to be able to express that and be very clear about that, so that if I, as an applicant, am looking for things, and that strikes my fancy and it's something I want to do, then at least, okay, great, I've got this alignment here. This is something that I'd like to do. And then through the interview process or through the TA process, now I'm getting to see, does it match my values? Is it something that I want to do? For us, teaching, research, and outreach, that's what we want our faculty to do. So if I'm a faculty member, if that's not important to me, if those things don't resonate with me, then I'm probably not going to have a great time at the University of Minnesota. I'm probably not going to have a great time if maybe if I go into healthcare and my number one thing is not caring for my patients in rural Minnesota. So I think that that alignment is so important, and it starts at the branding piece. And so I think those are our benefits, is that it really does help take your organization to that next level, whatever that might be for your organization.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it kind of comes in my mind, basically, you level the playing field that the people that are applying and coming into your funnel are people you want to talk to. Because I think someone can only fake the culture for so long, right? And they're going to get found out, or there's just going to be unpleasant, we don't want anyone unpleasant around us. But it's really interesting that, that alignment happens. What's kind of HR's role in binding those three aspects that we talk about: talent, tech, and culture? We're gonna dive a little bit into culture and talent here in a minute. But what's HR's role in binding these things together?
I think our role is, we're kind of the spoke in that wheel, if you will. We're the center of that. We certainly don't do it alone. I would say, if I think about my environment, we need everyone's help. We need our faculty there to be able to talk about realistic, what is it like to be a faculty member here, which I can say for our staff and our students, because everyone needs to be a brand ambassador, if you will, for the organization. And other places I've worked, same thing. Tell me what it's really like. I'm going through this interview process, but what is it really like? But I think for HR's role, it's key, because we're the face a lot of times. Once an individual gets into the organization, HR is often, the first people they meet, if it, maybe after they meet TA, which TA often falls into HR. And so when you say HR, they're going to think of TA, they're going to think of their benefits, they're going to think of everything, and falling under HR. And so we're the ones that kind of guide them through. If they have an issue, if they have a question, their onboarding, a lot of times, while it happens in the department, the technical onboarding, the how do I get things done, where do I go, how do I get there, is happening with HR. And so HR is really that first point of contact, is really that first impression that they get, and they keep coming back. Whether it's automated with a system, you might have the best system in the world, but if that system doesn't work, who are they going to call? It's going to be HR. So, no matter what's happening, HR is going to be that place. And if HR is not that place, if it's not because HR hasn't done what they're supposed to do, then that's not a good thing either. So I really think that first, HR is that first impression.
Yeah,
so,
super important. You made the comment that, obviously HR can't do it alone. Maybe really quick, dive into some of the other stakeholders that are involved in, pulling that culture and talent and tech together. I think you're going to say everybody.
Yeah, I would love to say everybody, but I know that's not the case all the time. But I think for me, I work very closely with, the CFO of my college. I report directly to the dean of my college, but then I also have a dotted line reporting relationship to the VP of HR. So I've got the HR community, and then I've also got the functional community and the business community as well, that I've got to kind of find that balance. And as we all know, sometimes those two communities definitely collide. But I think your stakeholders are those that, or I should say my stakeholders are those that really want what is best for us. Our clients, if you will, are the students. What do our students need? So for me, my stakeholders also include student services. It includes, the graduate school, the director of graduate studies, director of undergraduate studies. So I've got quite a few stakeholders that when things are maybe being pushed from a central human resources standpoint, I've got to think about how will this play, or how does this, how will this impact my staff that might be helping students? And then go a step further, well, what will this then do to the student? And because I don't necessarily interact directly with students, I generally stop at, how does this affect the staff? But I do have to still think about, then how will it affect the students? Because if it affects my staff in a way that is not positive, inevitably that's going to have an impact on my students. So stakeholders really carry a lot of weight, as I think you all know that too.
Yeah, definitely pulling those all together can be a challenge, and I think that's my director, our VP of HR, I think that's why he might have a few less hairs, just say it that way.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot on the plate, I think maybe I want to transition here a little bit, Joy, and talk a little bit deeper about culture and talent, right? It's easy to see the connection between culture and brand that we've been talking about, but how does culture and talent really go hand in hand, or maybe what role does recruiting have to pull that together? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
From my perspective and from my experience at the university, it's definitely hand in hand, which is I think somewhat obvious, because of the fact who you bring in is going to determine, I think I said it earlier, the culture that you have. And I think you have to be honest about who you are. I think you have to be honest about what you are there to achieve. Maybe 20 years ago, money was a major motivator for a lot of folks. I think we are getting away from that. I mean, we aren't working for free, that's true too, but people are also thinking about time, family, health, well-being. We're hearing more and more about that. And so your culture has to be one that is flexible and agile and can accommodate for all of these things. And so there are definitely organizations out there that are like, this is who we are, and we are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and that is it. So when you're recruiting and you're looking for talent, you need to be open and upfront and honest about that. So again, the person can make an informed decision, because if you are that type of person, or that type of organization, and you go and get the person who's looking for flexible hours and telecommuting and things of that nature, now you've got one unhappy person that you've brought in, and that's going to permeate throughout and perhaps affect everybody else around them. And so they're very much linked, because the people that you bring in are going to have to get on the bus, if you will.
Right.
They're going to have to get on your bus. If you are happy about the culture you have and you want to sustain the culture you have. Now, if you're in a transition phase or a transformation phase, and you want to come and you are into changing the culture, then that's where you go find folks that are going to come in and do some different things. But then you've got to tell the folks in your organization, we're changing, and we're going to shake things up, and things are going to be different. But honesty is the key. You've got to let people know. And I know it sounds a whole lot easier than it is to do, but everyone needs to be on the same playing field. And your talent is the way to start that.
Yeah, that's so true. I see it here for us at Verified First, right? We are an organization that is in rapid change, and if I were looking out in the market, and I'm not in the market, but if I were looking, I like the flexibility and the ability to do the work when I want to do the work, or when we need to, right? And I don't ever probably see myself in that 8 to 5 clock in, clock out probably ever again in my career. It's very, very true what you're saying, but being honest about it and being, hey, this is the expectation. And it's really, really kind of been interesting at Verified First. Most of our employees we work East Coast time. We're in Mountain, right? So we're out in Idaho, and we clock in at 7 a.m. and we're done at 3:30 in the afternoon. So that's kind of our work hours, and it's been kind of interesting to see that as people go more remote, that is starting to shift and change a little bit. There's some, it's loosening a little bit, kind of what our expectation, because we're getting work done in the way people are doing it at home. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So as a college, we talk a little bit about culture. You made the comment, I think you want to be a college for all. Talk to us a little bit about what that means when it comes to your culture and obviously acquiring good talent.
So for us, that means that we want everyone to feel welcome, right? Now, we also realize that not everyone may have the ability to come to our institution, whether that be due to funding, due to I can't get to Minnesota, I don't want to go to Minnesota, whatever the case may be. But
right.
For us, it's about that inclusion piece, and it's about the retention piece. I think for a long time, we focused on we need to represent the communities that we serve, right? People want to come in and see folks that look like them, teaching them, mentoring them, being a part of the active university community. But then it was, wait a minute, they left. We had someone that looked like me, but now they're gone. And we didn't focus on the retention piece. And so now it's about, we want everyone to feel welcome, included, but we want that to be sustainable. So what's realistic? Do we have the systems in place to sustain and retain folks of the BIPOC community, folks of the LGBTQ community, everyone that has their identity for themselves? Do they see themselves at the University of Minnesota? And so what that means from a recruiting standpoint or a TA standpoint is look at where we're sourcing. Where are we going? Who are we connecting with? And so we can bring in all we want, but who are we, how are we retaining? What's happening on the inside of the organization to make people feel included and welcomed, and they want, what makes them want to stay? And so I think we're going to be looking into, more stay interviews. Policies are being reviewed. Policies are being reviewed through a D&I lens, which they have not been before. We're doing that. We have a lot. We are heavily, we have shared governance, and it's a pretty complex shared governance. And so a lot of things have to be vetted before they're put into practice. And so we've now, we have a DE&I policy committee that reviews all policies, because as we know, oppression can be found in policies. Matter of fact, often lives in policies. So I think we're just being more intentional about what's happening out there, but it's, you have to think about it. And make moves.
Definitely important, as a background screening provider as well, right? The DEI is something we really have to think about too. And that policy is what we stand for, because at the end of the day, we provide a service, but the policy that you have as an HR leader is how that service is applied. I just want to jump to one of our audience questions. So this is not prepared, it might be weird, but so let's hypothetically say you got this world where you found this candidate that, it fits your culture well, right? It's someone that believes in what you believe in, that we talked about. And then you're all of a sudden up against competitive wages. What are some tricks you pull out of your sleeve, or cards you pull from your sleeve to deal with that kind of scenario? And that comes from Macy. So Macy, thank you for your question. So how do we deal with competitive wages after you found that, oh, this is a perfect fit, it aligns with our strategy, all our stakeholders benefit, and now it's all about money. So how do you deal with that, Joy?
Thanks, Macy. So how we have to deal with that, we come up against that a lot. And, you know, as a higher ed institution, we, as a public one, we don't have a ton of funds to throw out there. And so we have to really rely on our benefit package. We talk about our, you know, our 401k and all of that, but then we get down to the mission of the university and the mission about, or the mission to be out in front, to be able to have the cutting edge technology, to be able to find cures for things, to be able to know what is happening on the you know, with our scholarly pieces. And I'll tell you, for staff, it's really difficult. Faculty, you can pretty much, you know, they're easy to kind of hook at the beginning, because they're like, yes, I can come in and do my research, or yes, I can come in and start my practice. And if you give me a startup package of X, I can do that. Staff, it's a little more difficult, because they're like, well, how can I, as the accounting specialist, see, you know, really fulfill the mission of the university? And that's when you have to really help them see how they fit into the bigger picture. And so we really have to go through just what the university means to the Minneapolis community, what it means to the state of Minnesota, some of our milestones, the fact that that the majority of medical professionals working in Minnesota graduated from the University of Minnesota. That's when you really have to show them just how much of an impact the university has on the state and the community, and then show them how what their role will do is going to have an impact on their department, and then how their department has an impact on their college, and how their college has an impact on the university. So you really have to walk them through how their job is going to be impactful. And then, you know, you get into the how many people have been here for 40 years and 50 years. It's a process. It is really a process.
Yeah, it's not easy, right? I mean, especially when funds are limited. I do think the one thing that stood out to me, Joy, that you mentioned for Macy is, you know, if it's, I don't know, I tend to think this way, and maybe this is my narrow mind experience, but if it comes down to money and that's the only thing in the way, it's probably not a good fit anyway. You know, if they're going to go for the next $10 or whatever it is, I don't know. But I don't know. I think that's good feedback, is going to your mission. And, you know, if you're attracting the right kind of talent because your culture is strong, it makes it a much easier sell. I think you're still going to have issues with wages. But again, it goes back to the personal aligning to what you're all about, I think. So good call. I think kind of similar to this, a couple months ago, we interviewed another HR at the table, Virgilio Centron. He mentioned that HR should be recruiting and hiring for talent that aligns for the culture. And I think we've driven this home quite a bit. But what are some of the downfalls if they don't, maybe as warning signs, if you really don't align that recruitment strategy to the culture?
Well, I think you risk high turnover.
Okay.
Because someone comes in maybe a little disillusioned what they thought. Maybe, you know, again, that person who's only chasing the dollar, not that that is bad, but if that is the primary motivator, and that might not be what you're all about as an organization, they could, you know, leave because they're like, well, wait a minute, I was expecting, you know, this amount, or this was going to be. I mean, coming to higher ed, no one is coming to become a millionaire.
That's
I will
true.
say that. So you've got that risk. I think if you've got, I think you a downfall of not taking that into consideration is also just ruining your current culture. If everybody is going this way and you've got somebody going this way, what do you do? I mean, you've got a divide now. So how do you handle that? So you've got employee relations issues, you've got just unhappy people in general. And there's just a disconnect. So now you're spending all your time trying to figure out, how do I repair this disconnect, that maybe you find out things later that you could have found out at the beginning of the process. And so that's like Ben said, we've hammered it at home, but that's the importance of that alignment. And we all have these situations, because some people can be very good interviewers, and you find out later. But I think that it just proves why alignment is so important.
Yeah. It definitely talks to the goals and values, and from the gate, if we can get that right, it's probably going to go better. So maybe some tips, as we before we kind of jump into technology. We think about trying to get that synergy of culture and talent. We already talked about being open and honest, and we kind of keep driving this home. But maybe is there some real world examples, Joy, that you've experienced in your career of where maybe a good example where you were open and honest and the outcome of that, and maybe an example where you kind of hid things because you weren't really ready to be open and honest, and the outcome of that?
Sure. So we just finished a search. We were the search committee, very open, honest about what we wanted, what we would like. We were given the charge. Came down to the final 2, I believe it was, and we had some very strong opinions about what we wanted and why we said these were the final 2, and gave our thoughts and opinions. And I'm not too shy, if you haven't realized that, and neither were the others on my search committee. And when it was all said and done, we were, put it like this, our choice was not chosen. And so, we gave our final 2, so obviously our second choice was not horrendous, but we just felt that number 1 was better. And we really had to talk through that with the individual that gave us our charge, because we felt that our first choice really checked all of our boxes, would really been an asset to our culture, like as a 10, if you will. The other individual was probably an 8. Now, do we think that that's going to be that we regret that? We don't regret that, but I think that what it kind of taught us was, you can have a group of individuals thinking one way, and then you could have another group of individuals thinking another way, looking at the same individual, hearing some of the same things, because of course we shared some of our conversations, and have it being read differently, very differently. And I think it just really took all of us aback that, hey, we thought we were on the same page here. We thought we wanted this type of person for our culture. We wanted this type of person, with these sets of skills. And wow, you kind of change the script a little bit. And so I think it just goes to show that even when you're in the same organization, having the same mission, having the same culture, the vision, values, that is still can be seen very differently and can be interpreted very differently. So yeah, so that was one where we thought it worked, but it didn't.
Sure.
Well, and I guess it did, because we did get a good hire. It just wasn't our 10 hire.
You didn't spend your time on a lot of bad candidates. Let's put it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, there you go. And let's see, where it just completely, I guess, or maybe,
And it might have been a while. I mean, it could have
yeah,
been a previous career because you guys, you're living culture of University of Minnesota for several years. Maybe it's something
yeah,
else. We weren't quite upfront. The first thing, verified first when we hire someone, I tell them is like, this is a fast pace. And when you've been at a fast pace, you know nothing about fast pace. Wait till you join our team.
exactly. I will have to say, so this kind of happened with me personally when I came to the university.
Okay.
When I came to the university, I had at that time 20 years of experience in HR, and I thought, this is great. I'm trying something new. I'm doing higher ed now. And what I was told was that your HR experience, there will be days when you will rely on that HR experience, and there will be days when your 20 years will mean absolutely nothing. And I didn't believe what I was told. And then when I started, that's absolutely the truth. And so I felt in that moment like, thank goodness I was told that, because I had an expectation of the fact that HR in higher ed is very different than HR in the private sector. I mean, I had the expectation that, oh yeah, maybe a little different, but I will tell you that there were days that 20 years of HR experience did not matter based on what was going on within the higher ed space, than what would have happened in the private sector space. And so I appreciated being told that before I signed on the dotted line, that this is what's going to happen. And so the U has been very open and honest
Very,
about that type of thing. So yeah, that I very much appreciated.
yeah, definitely a better experience, I think, overall. So that's
Yes,
good. Well, I
yes.
want to transition into a poll question. Before I do that, how does technology, we're going to talk a little bit about technology in our last little piece here. How does technology tie this together? So let's think about that just for a minute. We're going to take a little break and kind of jump into a poll question for our audience. We've been running this survey for the last, so while we're in May, it's May already. And this survey is really to help us understand different areas of technology that people are investing in for an annual report we're going to push at the end of the year. So for those in our audience, take a moment and let us know what areas of technology that you're looking to replace in the next year, and we'll share the results with you shortly. And also, as we're going along, as we wrap up our last 10 minutes here together, Joy, I just want to remind the audience, we're happy to take questions. These last 10 minutes are your time, and we're going to talk a little bit about technology and how it binds everything together. And again, just a few more seconds for this poll question. Joy, I know you're probably not the overarching technology person that makes all the technology decisions for University of Minnesota, and that's probably quite the large, organization that does that, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
What is some common technology you see your organization shifting in when it comes to the HR tech stack? Just curious if we share the results here.
Yeah, I think that we're in the process right now of, we just hired a new director of talent acquisition. Very excited about that. And so I believe that what we're going to be doing is probably looking at a new CRM. We're probably going to be looking at a new ATS system. We've really tried over the last couple of years to make sure that our, I would say, how we engage with the applicant experience
Mhm.
has been something we've been working on, and we need to really beef that up a little bit more. It was just maybe 2 years ago that we were able to get the mobile interface working really well, and I know we were behind the times on that. Yeah, I know. but we need to continue with that. And so I would say A and B is probably something that we're going to, I don't know if we'll replace it, but we are definitely going to be working on that
Right.
with our director of TA. Because right now, I feel like applicants are making decisions based on how they view an organization right at that moment. You know, if they're looking for a role, if they can't get into the site or can't see what's happening, whether it's their phone or their laptop, if they can't get what they need right then and there, they're like, move on, you know. And so
Yeah, we've kind of turned ourselves into this instant world that you have to have everything right now.
yeah, that's right. That's
And I don't know about you, I think I told you right before we started our webinar that I have a timer to tell me when to go to bed because I don't know how to turn it off.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. So technology, you know, is a catalyst, obviously, the binding everything together. And, you know, I'm just curious for our audience, if you think about technology a little bit here, Joy, you know, how does technology really play a role in bringing that talent and culture together for you guys at the University of Minnesota, or maybe even specifically for your department?
So technology for us, and especially for CSE, because we've got computer science in our college, it plays a big role. I mean, we're always looking for what is the next thing that is, you know, big. So if we get somebody that can program in a new language or an up and coming language, we're all over them. And so we do, I would say, a lot with the job board. So we're more scouring. Our computer science folks are more word of mouth and then scouring job boards and so forth. And so that's kind of more CSE, or College of Science and Engineering. The university as a whole really focuses on the applicant tracking system and our recruiting system as a whole, PeopleSoft, and works on keeping the database up and trying to court folks and trying to keep people warm, if you will, and utilizing all of the bells and whistles that system has, which is not as many as we would like. But we're more trying to figure out how do we keep people engaged if we don't have a position, because really at the U, while we have a lot of positions open, they are more of that entry level position. And so for things in that kind of civil service type of level, civil service and kind of that professional level, they don't come open as much. But so now we're trying to figure out how do we take the technology and be able to still stay connected with people, still keep them engaged, still, you know, how can we find them when we need them? That type of thing. And that's about how we're using it at a university level.
You know, the beginning of the year, we talked with IBM about kind of a little bit of the AI blockchain technology. Are you guys there yet, or do you feel like you're still behind like you were with mobile?
Behind.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think a lot of organizations are. It's kind of interesting, you know. I think technology is probably the answer. We have a question from Gary, and it's somewhat related here, Joy. Is, you know, we talk about, you know, ROI of culture, talent, and tech, right? And a couple months ago, we talked with Chris Corney. He really talked about speaking the CFO and CEO language as an HR leader. So how do you, I guess Gary's question is, how can organizations measure the ROI of culture, talent, and tech? Any resources or tools that you use to say, oh yeah, this investment's worth our time?
At this point, thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
At this time, you know, we're only using the very generic, I call them, reports. So, and they're only used at the Office of Human Resources or Central Human Resources level. The time to fill, the turnover, there are only a few of the action reason codes that we capture about why people leave. At the college level, it's through, exit interviews. So it's pretty subject dependent and objective, if you will. So not hard numbers. So we are just trying to figure out what are the metrics that we need to be measuring that are purposeful and helpful, but any numbered or any metrics that are captured right now are captured at the university level. Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not an easy one always to answer, so it's a really good question.
Yeah, I wish we did more. I think we're going to do more.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like, I mentioned earlier that I'm at the defense stage of dissertation, and my dissertation's on marketing, of all things, because that's what I do. But it's really interesting, Gary. You might check out Interbrand. They have a report on kind of how brand value impacts the cost of acquisition of employees. So it might be a good resource. If you want to message us, I can get you a link, but I've read that guide, and they talk about the brand of Apple and how much they pay per employee less because of the value of the brand of Apple. Super interesting. But anyway, well, Joy, we're like at the end of our time. I wished I had like another 10 hours for us to chat, maybe next time. But didn't that go fast?
It did. I'm like, wait.
Well, awesome. Well, hopefully, we want to really give a quick call out again to our sponsor, Smart Recruiters. And, Joy's contact information is here. Joy, thanks for providing that for us. You can reach out to Smart Recruiters Verified First, any questions. And really, really kind of excited for our next episode of HR at the Table, but I'm not going to spoil it. So we'll give it back to our magic little voice here. But Joy, it's been good talking to you today. And thank you so much for coming to our interview.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
Well, hello, everyone. It's me again. That was an amazing discussion. I want to say thank you so much to Ben and Joy for taking the time out of your day today to speak on this important topic and be a resource for other HR and TA professionals. If you wanted that SHRM credit for attending this webinar today, you can email contact@verifiedfirst.com. Make sure to send your first and last name and include which webinar you attended today, and we'll get that certification to you within the next 48 hours. We'll be sending out the webinar on demand in case you want to use this for reference or send it to a colleague. Also, check out our website at verifiedfirst.com for HR at the Table blog topics, where we narrow in on key points and break it down for you. Next, we're interviewing Aptitude Research founder and industry-leading analyst, Madeline Lorano, to discuss the state of talent acquisition technology 2021 trends. We hope you can make it. That's all, folks. We'll see you next time.